So being in Utah was a complete culture shock.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah,
Wow.
You keep upping your challenges
Yes.
apparently.
I know. It was a huge culture shock. And I went in the middle of winter and I never lived in a cold place before.
Oh.
And so it was just shock in everything. Shock to my system. There was snow. It was cold. I didn't have the proper clothes or shoes.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Pride Talk. And for those that may be new to us, Pride Talk is a podcast presented by Nap Pride. Our podcast features in-depth conversations with Asian American LGBTQ+ professionals and our allies. Today we continue our intimate conversations with Dr. Kim Liu. I'm sure you all are wanting to hear more of her captivating story. I'm your host, John Ong, and with me is co-host David Moore. Say hi, David.
Hi, everyone. Hi, John. Like you said, Kim's story is so fascinating. And yes, I am sure the listeners are wanting to hear more of her story. But before we continue, I just wanted to take a moment to do a shout out to our new corporate sponsor, Molson Coors. Because of their generous support, we are able to bring you this new season of Pride Talk.
Yeah, thank you, Molson Coors. And yes, because of their generous support, we're able to bring you conversations like the one we're presenting with Dr. Liu. In this episode, Kim shares more about her early college years in Hawaii, being exposed to many different cultures, including the transgender community, the negative power of words within the family unit, and hiding your truth. We also discuss the culture shock of going from diverse cultures of Hawaii to Utah. But was there some other reasons for her moving to Utah? Could it have been a boy, a girl? Let's get back to the story and find out as Kim discusses relationships, attraction, chemistry, and a surprise revelation. Okay, so let me ask you this question. Would you ever felt like your parents knew about your sexuality earlier on?
I thought I was sneaky and good about hiding things.
Uh-huh.
And I actually thought I was really well in the closet until I think maybe, that second year of college, I spoke first to my brother and then I spoke to my younger siblings. And I said, I think I might be gay. And my sister, she's 4 years younger than me. And she said, I know. And I said, what? What do you mean you know? And she's like, well, I don't know if you remember, we used to share a room and you used to get clippings of these pretty women and hide it in the closet. I'm like, what? I don't recall this at all. She said, yes, you were liking women back then and I felt that you were different, but that is fine. I love you for who you are. I'm like, okay. I think I was like 16, so she must have been 12. So I'm like, what? Okay. But I didn't talk to my parents about it until I was already married to a man, and I think I was 23 or 24. And it's not that I talked to my parents about it. My mom pulled it out of me. She grilled me for 3 hours until I broke down and confessed.
Wow, we got to go back to that story still too. So let's go back to the college. So then we'll come back to this. So your college, did you sign it? Did you sign the code of conduct?
Yeah, I did. I had to sign it in order to go to that school. So I thought, okay, it's a free education. It's a good school. I can go to another country and be away from all these people that don't love me for who I am, because I felt very confined in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I think I can do it. I can pull it off. I mean, it's just 2 years. I can do it. You know? So I tried to conform for 2 years, at least that part of me. And I went to a school that was 70% international students. Mm-hmm. And it was very eye-opening, seeing all this different culture, all these different people. And it was in Hawaii. And being in Hawaii, I realized that the Polynesian culture or the Hawaiian culture, they have a third gender. Mm-hmm. And I realized, you know what? It doesn't have to be so black and white. Yeah. It's not all male and female. And I was studying psychology at the time besides pre-med. And it was very fascinating. I remember the course of human sexuality, and we went through all of that. And in Hawaii, I was exposed to the transgender community because apparently there's a lot of transgender people over there. And one of my projects for class was, I mean, back then for the DSM, the psychology book, homosexuality was a disease, you know. So we cover about that. Say that again?
Considered a disorder.
Yeah, it was considered a disorder, a mental disorder. And so I remember studying that and thinking, you know, I had a very strong reaction about it and thinking, I don't think this is right, but I don't want to expose myself and get kicked out of school.
Yeah.
But I recall...
Unlike David.
Yeah, that's right.
Unlike David. You have to go back. So if you're listening to this episode, if you have not listened to David's episode...
I know, I heard it. Yeah. Yes, I heard him saying, okay, there you go. Yeah. I should have, right? But at the time, I was like, come on, you can do it. You're almost done with school. One more year, you can do it, you know? And I was thinking, you know, one of my projects was I interviewed a transgender person, and I talked about being transgender, and I tried to, you know, show the humanity side of it, saying, you know, just because it's under DSM and say that it's a disorder, people are still people. And that was my point of the project, trying to show transgender people are also people. There's nothing wrong with them, you know. Like I didn't believe it was a disorder. And I recall going to counseling for that and, you know, talking to my to my counselor and saying, I know that I'm supposed to feel a certain way, but I feel this other type of way. And at the time he was saying, well, it's like, I don't recall what he said, like same-sex attraction or something like that. Oh, you're having same-sex attraction. And he said, you know, it's a safe space, but don't talk about it outside of school. You know what I mean? Outside of this office. And I was like, okay. And he said, well, it's a very prominent thing, but just don't talk about it outside of the office. I'm like, okay. Yeah. You know, and I tried to, you know, in college, I tried to date and I had a boyfriend and I thought, okay, maybe they'll get off my back. But I was still constantly thinking inside of me, like, I don't feel this okay. And I'll observe people around in school and see, okay, which are the people that seem more okay for me to talk to about this, you know, because I felt like I was about to explode. Every time I just felt like I don't want to get married, you know, I don't want to follow this path, but I felt like I had to. And I was very young too, you know, I'm in a different country, no family, you know, I'm on my own, and school was in a way my family, you know, so I'm like, okay, I don't want to get kicked out. Where am I going to go? You know, what would I do? I'm not even in this country. I don't have a legal status in this country. You know, I'm here as a student. So it's like all these different things in the back of my head. But I'll approach some friends and I'll talk to them about it. And they would tell me like, oh, you know, it's just a stage. You know, some people go through this in college or high school and you're very young, because I think I was 16 or 17. They're like, you're very young. You don't know who you are as a person yet. And, you know, you're a virgin. So I'm sure once you have sex with a guy, you would know, you know, like, and thinking, you know, in the back of my head, I'm like, ew, what? Why do I have to have sex with a guy? I don't want to find out that way, you know?
Yeah.
And I was thinking so scared about the prospect of marrying and having sex. Like I used to have nightmares about it. And I used to go to counseling and reading books about it. Because, you know, being a church school, a lot of people would get married. I think probably because part of the honor code, you're not supposed to have extramarital sex either, right? Yeah. So that's part of the honor code too. So I guess a lot of people, they just think, oh, it's easier. Let's get married and then we can have sex. And so I just keep seeing a lot of my friends getting married. And I start getting anxiety about it, thinking, oh my God, now like I'm going to be pushed to get married and what's going to happen and sex and oh my goodness, you know, I'll go to counseling about it, read about it and feel so violent against it, you know, like maybe something is wrong with me. I don't know. I don't even want to think about having sex. And girls will talk about, oh, you know, having a crush on this person or having sex with this person or, you know, things like that. And for me, I'm like, I don't feel any of that. I don't feel the need to want to sleep with somebody, you know? And so I remember some of the girls saying like, oh, it's so hard to, you know, not have sex before marriage. I'm like, oh, I have no issues with that whatsoever. You know? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand why you're having trouble. You know?
So you're not fitting in even outside of the family. Now you've got your own peers and you still feel like you're not quite fitting in. You're not finding your own tribe yet.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think, you know, allies are so important. Because, you know, definitely. Here she's trying to say who she is.
Yeah.
And everybody that she tells her truth to is telling her,
Not
don't
to.
tell anybody.
Yeah.
Don't
Message
don't
that
be
you're
that.
getting.
And that's why I think allies are so important, because they are the ones that then, embrace you and
Like-
say, I have your back. You can be who you are. And they don't tell you to be something else.
Yeah, because the message is that we're constantly being bombarded on every side, from the family, from outside the family, to tell you that, hey, wait, this is kind of okay, but don't tell anyone. So that in a way, it's already telling you that there's something wrong. You keep getting the same message that there's something wrong about it.
Right. And I think they are doing it from a place of caring, that they don't want you to get hurt. But what they don't understand is those words are actually more hurtful, because they make you second guess your own truth.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, talking to my brother, because he and I were very close, and talking to him and getting that message from him saying, you have to hide it. And I felt like, oh, something's wrong with me. And with my own mother, I recall her saying things like, maybe we're watching the news and, people start, I think in the late 90s and early 2000s, a lot of famous people started coming out. And it will show up on the TVs. And I recall my mom saying things like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end, these type of things. And why are people doing this? And she would say like, oh, these people are so sick,
Yeah.
And comments like that made me think, oh, okay, I should never say anything like this to my mom. She's already having issue with me as a person. If I tell her that, like, that's it, I'm kicked out of the house,
Right,
so I remember thinking that. With my dad, we never had that conversation, but I was worried about disappointing him, because for him, I was perfect the way I was. But that was one thing that I was not sure. And I feel like that drove a wedge in our relationship, because I felt that if I tell him, he's going to be so disappointed that I'm not perfect the way he always sees me as, So I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody in my family about this.
Yeah.
And the one person I did, he said, this is just a phase and just don't talk about it to anybody, just keep it to yourself. Yes. Yeah, that definitely made it more difficult to accept that part of me.
So especially for people who know that you're listening to this and you are allies of the LGBTQ plus community, but at the same time you don't really know how you can do things or what you can do things in your own family, is to maybe keep an eye and be aware of what those little comments that you might be making, because one of your children might be the one that needed to listen to this, or if one of the family members might be the one who need to listen, to not listen to those microaggression in the family, saying that, oh, look at that, sick. Because I remember I have an aunt who is a transgender aunt, and growing up, I have never heard anything from my family that there's something sick or wrong about it, and she's married. I don't know whether it must not be legal. I'm not sure, but because in Malaysia, I don't think they recognize. But I remember she and her husband would come to a family reunion or Chinese New Year, and that is just the way it is. Like, we know that she was a man before because she's really tall, and she's not quite passing because she's really tall and big, and her voice is deep. But we call her aunt, right? And so but there's not a negative connotation. I think that helped me to realize and accept and see transgender people as the same, because there's no looking down on that person. And I think that part of that is how my parents were treating my aunt that way, and the whole family treating her that way, that I didn't have any baggage of, oh, that's weird, or that's that's like a sideshow. Some people treat people, transgender people, like, oh, they're like this odd thing. So be very careful. I would say be very careful with the messages that you want the next generation to pick up in the family. I think, especially if you don't mean to be that way, and you don't want to you want to make sure you don't have that in your family.
Yeah, because once it's said, it's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my mom loves me unconditionally, but the one thing that sticks in my mind is that one time she said, "Thank God you're not like that." in reference to a gay person that she saw on TV. And that always has stuck with me because it was that one thing that made me feel like there was this something wrong. Yeah. And I think even when parents just say, you know, if they do find out that their child is gay or something, then they say, I still love you no matter what. That even has this connotation of no matter, well, you don't say that. You don't say that to your other children. You just say, I love you. You don't say, I love you no matter what. You just say, I love you. You know, so even little things like that can have some deep meanings to it that we carry with us.
Yeah, I love you, period, and there is no asterisk behind it.
Exactly. You know? Yes.
So you are in. Where were I? I got sidetracked a little bit, but you were in your college now. So, did you finish 2 years there?
I did. I finished school and I went to Utah from Hawaii to finish. I actually followed my counselor because my last semester school, he went to Utah, and I followed him because I felt like he was my ally despite of everything. Yeah. You know, I felt like I was comfortable. I could talk to him about any of my problems, and I wanted my last year of the school with him, you know, and so I followed him to Utah, and I did my capstone project over there. And my study at the time was about intercultural marriage and marital satisfaction. And so I did, you know, first part of the research in Hawaii, and the other part I did in Utah. So being in Utah was a complete culture shock.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, wow. You keep upping your challenges apparently.
I know. It was a huge culture shock, and I went in the middle of winter, and I never lived in a cold place before, and so it was just shock in everything. Shock to my system. There was snow. It was cold. I didn't have the proper clothes or shoes, and there's so many Caucasian people. I've never been surrounded by many Caucasian people before. And I just so felt out of place. I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I do to myself? And people were very nice, very, very nice. But it was just so interesting being there because people would say things like, oh, where are you from? You know, I'm like, from Dominican Republic. I'm like, oh, cool. You don't look like it. But okay, now I have to go to the whole story. Then they're like, oh, so when are you going back? I'm like, what do you mean when I'm going back? Like, oh, yeah, when are you returning to your country? I'm like, I don't know. Do I have to? You know, like, that's weird. But that was a very common theme over there, people asking those kind of questions. And apparently they ask that to anyone that's foreign or, you know, foreign looking. You know? And it was just so weird. They would say little comments like, oh, yeah, I really like this. Like, oh, I really like Chinese food. And I'm like, okay, what does that have to do with me? You know, like, I don't know. But it was just very different, you know. And there's like the Mormon subculture, and then there's the Caucasian culture, which is very different from Hawaii. You know, Hawaii is so mixed. Everybody speaking different languages on campus. So I was there for 6 months doing my project. I was there with my boyfriend at the time. And thinking like, I don't know, something is really wrong. Like, why am I doing this? You know, why am I in a relationship? And I was so depressed. I was so depressed. And I recall before I moved to Utah, another professor of mine, he said, I don't think you should go over there. And I think your relationship is not going to work. And I was mad at him. I didn't understand why he was saying that, but he didn't tell me straight up. He just said, I don't think you should do that. Your relationship is not going to survive. I don't even know why. You know, everybody else thought, you know, everything was good in my relationship. On the surface, it looked good. But this professor, I guess he was very observant, and he just straight up said, don't do it. It's not going to go well for you. And I thought, well, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know what's going on. You know, of course it's going to work out. You know, he loves me, you know, and all these different things in the back of my head. But I was those 6 months, I was really miserable. It was cold. I didn't know anybody. My relationship, it went south. It was just not good at all.
Your boyfriend was in Hawaii still?
Say that again?
Your boyfriend was in Hawaii at that time?
No, he was actually in Utah. It was a long-distance relationship. So it was a combination. So he used to, I'm trying to think. He used to go to school in Hawaii, but then he was in Utah. And I met him in Utah for an event. And I didn't, like, for me, the relationship was fine when he was in Utah. It was great. I had freedom. I just have to talk to him, you know, in the evening. You know, like, it was a great relationship.
Just as long as you're not physically close to each other.
I know. Exactly. I was like, in my head, I'm like, I don't understand why when we're together, I was not happy. But when we were not together, everything was fine. Like, that should have been a clue.
Someday I'm gonna tell my story about the I dated a girl one time too, and out of that 2 months, I think a month or so, I was actually out of the country, so that made it bearable. And so I'll tell a little bit more about that in the future if we get into it. Oh my gosh, I feel for you. I feel for you.
I think we've all been there.
It was just like, that was my first relationship, right? And in my head, I'm thinking, well, this guy is perfect. You know, like, he speaks all these different languages. He's a great dancer and he knows martial arts. You know, he's an engineer. You know, I'm thinking like all the things that Asian parents put in your head about what your spouse has to be like, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, check, you know, like, it fits, right?
Yeah. Like, not so much if you are compatible with each other or
that's across my mind.
Yeah, you know? it's the Asian check boxes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, this guy is like the perfect future spouse or boyfriend material, right? This is someone I can take home and present, and my parents would totally approve, except for the fact that he's not Asian. But I'm sure they can work with that. You know, I'm thinking like all these different checks. But then I'm like, I don't understand why whenever we're together, I just feel stressed out, you know, and I don't like it. And I'm like, I don't understand. Maybe something is wrong with me, you know, going back to something must be wrong with you, you know. And I think, I remember thinking, I'm not attracted to him. And I recall, I was attracted to who he represented, you know, all these qualities, these you know, talents. I was attracted to that. I was attracted to his music, you know, but not him. And I didn't understand. And I remember thinking, looking at his picture, I'm like, he's very good looking. And, you know, this is someone that I would like, but I could not understand why there was no chemistry.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, something must be really broken with me, you know, like maybe I'm just like letting my issues, you know, or me being afraid of sex and whatnot, you know, because I used to get so stressed out about it, even thinking, you know, being about intimate. You know, if we get married, how in the world am I gonna do that, you know? And I remember going to counseling still about it, saying like, I just don't feel comfortable with the idea. And at the time they're like, oh, it's fine, you shouldn't have sex before marriage anyway, so that's good, you know?
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, that'll be good, you can keep your virtue. I'm like, but I don't think this is the issue.
How about after the marriage?
Right.
Exactly. I'm like, how are we going to jump from keeping my virtue to the sex? You know, in my head, like, sex is wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was from, you know, the religious upbringing, or it was just me. Like, my subconscious was revolting against it, you know?
Yeah, it's just not your nature, right? It's not it's not your nature. So you feel differently.
And for me, I thought, because I thought at first it was a religious thing. But if it was a religious thing, everyone in school should feel the same way, right? But no, they could not wait to get married, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't think it's a religious thing. I don't know where this is coming from. But in my head, I keep thinking sex is bad, and stay away from the boys, you know? Yeah. Even though I have no issues with being friends with males, but that part of me was just repulsed, completely repulsed. And and I was thinking, how am I ever going to overcome thinking sex is bad? You know, I didn't know it was the wrong gender.
Just not the right person.
Yeah,
it was, you know, so I thought something was wrong with me.
When did you start to feel like when did you figure out that, oh, it's just the wrong gender that I'm thinking of? When did you figure that out?
That happened so much later. By then, I was already married to a man.
Oh, okay.
Oh my. So, what a revelation. We've known Kim for a while, and I never knew Kim was married before. That is what I love about this podcast and these conversations. We are really getting to know people and realizing we may come from different places and have grown up in different times and circumstances, but at the core, we share some very basic needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, knowing we are not alone, finding our truth, and having that truth accepted and validated by others. We have so much more in common. Please let us know how Kim's story has connected with you. Share your comments with us about our conversation with Dr. Liu. You can email us at pridetalk@nap.org. You can even call us and leave a voice comment. Our number is 4197 Pride 5. That is 4197 PRIDE 5. And of course, you can find all this information in the show notes, as well as on our website, pride.nap.org.
And a quick shout out to NAP, the National Association of Asian American Professionals, which is a nonprofit organization that cultivates and empowers Asian and Pacific Islander leaders through leadership development, professional networking, and community service. Check them out at nap.org. That's NAAP.org. We also want to thank our corporate sponsor, Molson Coors, for their continued support of NAP Pride and this podcast, and for their commitment to fostering open and inclusive workplaces where all employees are valued, engaged, and inspired to be the best they can be.
So please join us for our next episode where Kim shares about open relationships and how her ex-husband helped her find her authentic self. She also opens up about her battle with cancer, the physical and mental burden of hiding who she is, and ultimately finding peace in living her truth. Join us next time as we continue this very personal conversation with Dr. Kim Liu. Until then, remember this: representation matters. So be seen, be heard, be loud, and be proud. Bye.
Bye, everyone. The opinions expressed on Pride Talk are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views or opinions of our individual employers, NAP, or our sponsors.